The United States announced fresh sanctions targeting Venezuela this afternoon as punishment for the country's Sunday's election. Well, the sanctions primarily target institutions which buy and sell the nation's debt. The State Department says it has informed China and Russia of the new standards. The economic crackdown comes as Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro won a second six-year term, marking a major victory for the country's 20-year-old revolution. Anya Parampil has more tonight.
Despite hostility and threats from Washington, the people of Venezuela re-elected President Nicolas Maduro on Sunday, granting the leader 5.8 million votes. According to the country's National Electoral Council, or CNE, 46% of eligible Venezuelans participated in the election, with Maduro winning 68% of ballots cast. Bizarrely, the main opposition coalition, known as the Democracy Unity Roundtable, boycotted the election and called on their supporters not to participate. In fact, an hour before the results were even announced, opposition leader Henry Falcón declared he would not recognize the outcome. Falcón appears to be echoing sentiments in Washington, which denounced the elections as soon as they were announced. In a February notice, the State Department accused the Venezuelan government of denying the opposition participation in the electoral process and of revealing its, quote, authoritarian rule by planning elections. The Trump administration has made no secret of its wish for regime change in Venezuela. In August of last year, the president declared, quote, "We have many options for Venezuela, including a military option if necessary." Trump's statement followed similar remarks made in July by then CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who now serves as Secretary of State. The Independent reports in one of the clearest clues yet about Washington's latest meddling in the politics of Latin America, CIA Director Mike Pompeo said he was, quote, hopeful that there can be a transition in Venezuela, and we, the CIA, is doing its best to understand the dynamic there. He added, quote, "I was just down in Mexico City and in Bogota a week before last talking about this very issue, trying to help them understand the things they might do so that they can get a better outcome for their part of the world and our part of the world." On Monday, Secretary Pompeo released a statement reading, quote, "The United States condemns the fraudulent election that took place in Venezuela on May 20th. The so-called election is an attack on constitutional order and an affront to Venezuela's tradition of democracy." However, journalist Lucas Corner was in Venezuela to observe the vote and says he witnessed no irregularities.
We visited various voting centers throughout Caracas yesterday, and we spoke with numerous witnesses with the various parties of the Venezuelan opposition that are participating in this electoral process. And this is unique to Venezuela's electoral system, in which every voting center has witnesses for all of the parties that are agreed to participate in the process. And the opposition witnesses for both Henry Falcón's Progressive Advance Party, as well as representatives of the evangelical preacher Javier Bertucci, reported no irregularities whatsoever with the.
The statement also falsely stated the government, quote, banned major opposition parties and leaders from participating, when in fact the opposition parties and leaders chose to boycott the vote. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter observed Venezuela's presidential vote in 2012 and afterwards described the nation's electoral system as the, quote, best in the world. Still, the U.S. government would apparently like to see regime change through what it must consider to be more democratic means, militarily or with the help of the CIA. In Caracas, Maduro said of his victory, quote, "We have guaranteed the right to self-determination of the Venezuelan people. We have guaranteed the collective right to the homeland and the future recently violated by imperial forces in the world through warmongering and violence." In Washington, Anya Parampil, RT.
Earlier, RT spoke to Alexander Maine from the Center for Economic Policy Research. He believes the United States sanctions against Venezuela are holding the country back from recovery.
These sanctions that the U.S. is imposing, I think many people don't really understand them well. They are preventing the Venezuelan government from borrowing any additional funds on international markets, on most international markets. It's very difficult for them to do so, making it difficult for them to really fund any sort of economic recovery.